Okay, so Hussam, you rightly said that nobody can basically declare a person whether he's a Muslim or not except God Himself, except Allah, right?
Mm.
So I just want it because I personally believe, and I'm Moroccan just like Usama, so we basically come from the same background, and we don't have that sort of mentality that if a person does not pray, we gotta declare him as basically a kafir or non-believer. So I'm trying to figure out, like for example, and I want to ask you the question: do you believe that if a person does not pray, or basically he's a cultural Muslim, is he
Mm.
basically? Would you think that he's a? I'm not. Obviously, I'm talking about your belief. Would you say that he's a Muslim or not? If he's not
I'm
praying,
speaking
if
from a scholarly perspective. It's not personal. Like I'm
yeah,
speaking
yeah,
as far
yeah.
as I know about Islam jurisprudence and academia, not a personal thing. But of course, it is influenced by my convention. But this is another debate about ontology and epistemology. But yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm just like because I'm not because as I don't know her name like her name is Shetta. Yeah, I could obviously spell it incorrect, but I think she rightly said that if in Libya, if you don't follow a particular label, they would try to impose it on you, or they would basically label you as a non as a kafir, whatever name they would utilize. And I'm not really familiar with that sort of mentality. So because I'm coming from a Moroccan background, and you know this, it's not it's a cultural country, so we don't have that sort of mentality. So basically, if a person does not pray, I wouldn't dare and say, you know what, you're not a Muslim because you don't do this and that. So I'm
Yeah,
just
I will tell
trying
you.
to figure out.
Mm.
Can I correct something, Ayub?
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
so in Libya, it's not like if you don't pray, they say you're kafir. Like I,
Oh no, no,
one of
you except you
my,
said that they would try to impose that on you because
so the
something like that.
imposition is not direct. So it's not like there's a government body that says you have to be Maliki Sunni. We don't have
Oh,
that.
okay.
But
Yeah.
Yeah, I
there is
got you.
there's an indoctrination that is very subtle and indirect. That's why I had to ask my dad, what am I? And he told me I was a Sunni Maliki, right? Like I didn't know that. Nobody told me. And but it's there's socialization, there is indoctrination that just happens throughout history. And then my parents also are Sunni Malikis, probably because they were born into family that was Sunni Maliki as well. And it's just goes and you it just passes through generation after generation. It's not like that there's a body in Libya that says you have to be Sunni Maliki. And historically speaking, yes, that existed. Today, that we don't have that a body that governs your governs that. However, if you choose to become to no longer believe in Islam altogether, then that is a crime.
Yes.
If you become a Shi'i, I, I don't know the exact response to it, but it is condemned. So, but if you for as long as you are in the Sunni
Yeah.
field,
Because
you're
because
fine.
it kind of sounds weird because I don't know if you know about Morocco or not, but if down here we don't even think of those sort of political sects like Sunni sect. I don't even know what they are. Like we just know basically Muslim. You're a Muslim. You submit to the will of God, then you're good. This is it. So you don't
but
really need to basically put
but but
yourself within a box.
but
This
that
is
lack
like
of
this
but
is my
that lack of
opinion.
but that lack of knowledge of what sect or what madhab that you belong to is good and bad at the same time, I would argue.
Yeah.
And the reason is I apparently was practicing Sunni Islam without even knowing that I was Sunni Islam. I didn't even know that
What
there
do
were
you mean?
other.
What do you mean by
Uh,
practicing Sunni Islam?
So our practices are informed by
Mm.
the history of the madhab al-Maliki.
Mm.
I didn't know that my practices were informed by that. I was just like, that is Islam. Am I trying? Am I
That
Yeah.
making
is my
sense?
point. It is just as
yeah.
No, but for example, I know what Shad is saying because, for example, I was praying once in a room and I had my hands to my side, which is how my family pray. And then this Yemeni family were with us, and one guy was like, one guy was like, "Oh, this is the Salah of the Shia. Shame on you." I was like, "What are you on about, Salah of the Shia?" Like everyone in my mosque in Morocco pray like this.
Yeah.
And then I
Yeah.
realized, like what Shada was saying, that this is a Maliki thing. But these labels have been retrospectively applied to us. We don't necessarily grow up saying, "I'm a Maliki, a Sha'ri."
Yeah.
You know
It's
what?
all
Do you know what I
political.
mean? This is
I,
the fact.
I
I think, Osama, this raises a question of like what our societies are composed of, right? And I've actually, I mean, I come from a very different background and have a completely different history, right? But I've actually heard this from quite a few of my friends who have grown up in majority Muslim countries in the Middle East or in South Asia, right? So everyone was Muslim and everyone was just doing their thing, right? And it was not until they actually moved to more multicultural and more plural societies, right, in terms of religions and cultures and different methods, that they realized that, oh wow, right, there's actually all this diversity in terms of what type of Muslim you are and how exactly you practice Islam. Yeah, so this is something that I find really, really fascinating, right? This question of
Exactly.
of majority and minority, and then how does this change when you move, right, from one context to another?
Exactly.
Really, really fascinating stuff.
You see, this is what the point I was going to make about the Moroccan king, because his lineage has links with the Fatimids as well. Now, the question is, if the question with what Lawrence was asking Hussam is, does that make the Moroccan monarch a Shia institution? Then I would say no, because the Shia label has only emerged in relatively recent modern history and been retrospectively applied. Whereas those people at that time just saw themselves as people that were following the Prophet. They didn't necessarily say, I'm a Shia. This is a modern, I don't think the Shia Sunni labels are post-Iraq intervention. I think that's a myth. I believe I've read literature where this is mentioned before 2003, for example.
Exactly, that's correct.
Yes.
But also, Usama, but also, like, if you know that, like, if we're talking linguistically speaking, what is a Muslim? Like like a person who submits his will to the will of God. That's a Muslim.
By the way, speaking of this point, and I'm sorry for interruption, I don't fully endorse using the word submit, because still it is not purely Islamic, because rather the word would be to obey, but not to submit.
Okay, no problem. So yeah,
Interesting.
let us utilize the word obey. So if a person obeys his creator, then he's a Muslim by definition, correct? So you're okay with that?
Okay, please go ahead.
Right. So like my point is like this is it. Like I don't like personally. I believe if you believe in a God and you submit your will to that particular God, then you're good. You don't really have to follow a particular like a particular label, Sunni, Shia, whatever, Hanafi. No, you just basically acknowledge the existence of God, and then you're good. This is like my opinion. Like because as I said, I was born. I'm a cultural Muslim, and my family are also cultural Muslims, and they don't even like. I know some so-called Salafi Muslim who would actually say that I'm not a Muslim because why? Because I don't pray, because I listen to music. So they would actually try to make takfir on me just because I do that particular thing. So I don't. I can't figure out why did I say that. Like it does sound like a brainwashing thing. So I'm just like saying anybody can be a Muslim just by definition.
But how do you feel about it, Ayub? Do you feel like you self-identify as a Muslim?
Well, yes, I do like being identified as a Muslim, but I'm not a practicing Muslim. I wish I was because due to the way that I was brought up, because the way that the environment that I was growing in. So none of my family, yeah, they do pray, but they wouldn't say, you know what, you come, they don't even talk to you about religion. So you get what I'm saying? So they just like, it's up to you. That's your own personal choice. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, but I do identify myself as a Muslim. I'm just not practicing. This is it.
I wanted to just ask one other thing, and then I think Saman's got a question, which is that Hussam, sorry we're picking on you today. It's better you than me for once. So do you I remember I was working with you in Al-Azhar at the time when ISIS came out, and I remember Al-Azhar specifically not making takfir on Daesh, right? And at the time, I actually thought this was a very clever move and a good move because it's a consistent move. You cannot say that Daesh and Wahhabi, well, I know Daesh are a certain type of Salafiyah, right? But generally speaking, you cannot say that Orthodox conservative Muslims are wrong to make takfir if you then make takfir on them. Okay, so I thought this was a consistent.
No, I think.
However, Jennifer, just very quick, and then you can answer this as well. My question is, there were some people that were our colleagues that believed that maybe Al-Azhar should have made takfir on them because there needs to be a firm stance. How do you square that with not being a hypocrite?
No, but Osama, sorry, I mean, I know that the question was not directed at me,
No,
Please.
please,
but I just respond anyway, sorry. And then, so we'll take my completely lay woman's perspective, and then we hear from the real expert. I'm not sure I would call it strategic. I'm not sure, I'm really not sure I agree with that, because that implies that that there were different motives behind this, and that it wasn't just about the cause, right? Or the cause at question, right? I would expect, and definitely from a religious institution, I would expect that if there is a question, such as the one that you just described, right? Is someone a Muslim? Is someone not a Muslim? That in deciding this question, that they're not being motivated by strategic thinking, right? And by political, basically what is political motives, I would expect that they have a clear definition. This is a Muslim, right? Factor A, B, C make you a Muslim. Factor D, E, F, you're moving outside of the realm of Islam. And then that's it. So there is no strategy for me in there. It's really just a matter of having definitions, looking at them. And to be very honest, I do remember the discussions about ISIS back in 2014, because I was working on women and terrorism at the time. So then all of a sudden ISIS, right, and the fact that it attracted so many female followers became big. So I was very interested in all of these debates at the time. And I was really, disappointed by how a lot of these discussions went, because I really didn't think that the key point was to declare them non-Muslims, right? That was not the problem. They can, and I think this is a reflection of a major issue that we have in Muslim communities. Muslims can do horrible things. There is no need to right, like, why this urge to declare people as non-Muslims, as if we needed to push this issue outside, away from Islam and outside of Muslim spaces. No, someone can be a Muslim. We have very clear definitions. We look at these, yes or no. And this includes people who are murderers, who commit genocide, and the list goes on.
Hussein, what do you think? Do you think it's better to declare them as kafir, or do you think it's better to take ownership of the problem?
There is a very important point to keep in mind. A very significant and a very clear distinction need to be drawn between the act of the individual and the belief of the individual, or the individual per se. The ruling in Islam does not relate to the individual. Like when it comes to a faqih, which is the role of a scholar of Al-Azhar, when they issue a ruling, the ruling is regarding the act of the individual. So in very simple terms, I cannot say a knife is halal or haram. The question is not about the knife. The question is when the knife is used. If it is used for cutting bread and such purposes, it becomes permissible. But if it is used to harm and to kill, the act of the usage itself is haram. So let's keep this in mind. Just as Jennifer mentioned, I don't see that when Al-Azhar clarified this, it is not even a position or a stance to take. It is to clarify that. And you find this in the works and the seminal works of many well-known Muslim scholars, like Imam al-Ghazali, for example, or Imam al-Ghazali. Both are correct, by the way, al-Ghazali or al-Ghazali. So he mentions in a very important book of his, which is Faisal al-Tafriqa bayn al-Islam wa al-Zandaqa, that what only takes the person away of Islam is denying what brought them into Islam. And the very straightforward thing that brings a person or an individual or a human into Islam is the testimony of faith, or the Shahada. So only this, when this is rejected, then by this the person leaves Islam. Still, this is not for a human to do. This is not the function of a human being to do. Rather, it is Allah, because Allah knows what is in the heart of everyone. And this is why, like Rafiddin, or there is no compulsion in religion, because essentially it is an act of the heart. But Al Azhar was also very clear that the acts that are done by Daesh, they are not Islamic. Why? Because there is nothing in Islam that supports doing this or condones doing this. Like for example, killing Yazidis, expelling Christians from their homes. This is totally not Islamic, and Islam is very clear about this. And there is nothing that in Islam that justifies this or supports this. So this is the distinction that need to be drawn in this regard. I think I don't want it to dominate all the discussion, but I think this makes it clear. Hopefully,
I think Saman, before we wrap up, Saman has a question as well.
unmute on the mic.
Now, okay.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yes.
مرحبا تحياتي أستاذ تحياتي. Hope you fine. Actually, I'm someone from KRG. I'm a Kurd. I'm not Arab, but we are Muslim. And but actually, the religion diversity has been a feature or form of the Kurdistan from a many centuries. You know, in Kurdish, there is they believe Islam. Okay, they believe Zarathustra. They believe Yarsan. They believe many Alavis. We also have. But most of Kurds, they believe they are Sunni and believe Shafi'i, which is the liberal school of Islamic, right? But my question isn't, you don't know, you have Yazidi, the Kurd, they don't believe of Islam, but ISIL, they targeted Yazidi. Also they targeted the Christian. So my question, so isn't ISIL represent the Islam or not? Please, if you make clear. Yeah, as a court, we accepted the Islam through Umar Khattab, Ahd Umar Khattab, and but to be honest, we feel more the religion or the Arab or the Turk or the Persian, that didn't respect our understanding, our accepting to the Islam. Until now, they deny us, they're rejecting us. Even in Iraq, the Shia and the Sunni. I think you have full idea about the Kurdish story, about the Kurdish question for freedom, for living together, for acceptance, for tolerance, for being human and acting as a humanity. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Before Hussam answers, Mohammed, can you please express your question as well?
Yeah, so I think so I agree with like what Shraddha had to say. Like, you know, there is like coming from a country, like I come from India, like I'm originated from there, which has like the second highest, like the Muslim population. But then there is like a huge disconnect between the academia and the general population. So what that sort of leads to is people very much being, you know, susceptible to extreme opinions. So they stick to someone who has to say something, or someone that they or their family has followed over generations, and they just stick to those people. Like there is not, like I feel this has happened a lot over the Muslim majority countries, that there has been no opportunities for having an open thought, which is what I feel became like a huge impediment. And mostly with sectarianism, what I've seen is become like, you know, sectarianism. Okay, so Prophet Muhammad had acknowledged sallam, that there would be sects, right? There is a proper hadith, like Hussam would agree with me. But then sectarianism later, between at least I feel like in the Islamic history, became a large part of, like it became like it became a tool to acquire more power. Like it became an excuse for people to, you know, get followers. Like even within, like you see, the Khilafat was supposed to, like Khilafah was supposed to unite people and bring people together under the banner of Islam. But then later it became like even the Khilafah, what it was like ironically to bring people together, became a source of divide between, like, whether it's Shias, whether it's Sunnis, and the further divisions that came between the Shias and the Sunnis themselves.
Yeah, many questions were raised, but I need to comment on a very important point. I laughed when I don't remember, it was Muhammad or Saman, when one of you said the Shi'i madhab and it's a liberal one. So this is, you see how the term like
I think he said
Shafi'i,
Shafi'i, sorry, Shafi'i.
yeah, he said Shafi'i and it's a liberal.
one of the liberal ones.
Yeah, you see,
What I see, I don't know.
yeah, you see what I mean?
One of the liberal ones.
Yeah, you see?
One.
So my observation is about how the term liberal is used. This is a very important point.
I mean, more open, more accepting. Let's say.
I see what you mean, but as a Muslim, I understand you. But for others who don't understand all the details of what's in the back of your mind, they will be confused and they would understand many other things when it comes to liberalism, which is a completely different story. So this is what I meant by the idea of understanding each phenomenon in its own terms, and to be very careful when it comes to how we use terms in things like this. Very quickly, I think it was Luay who raised, or who Ayub who raised the question.
The man asked,
Yeah, man, it's me.
I need a question. I need another webinar to respond and answer all of this.
He was asking if ISIS represent Islam and why or why not.
Yeah, I see. But also before that, there was a question about prayer, and it was also important. But since you are highlighting the question,
Hussam, if you don't mind, could I repeat the question? Obviously,
okay.
So
Okay.
my question was obviously about whether if the person happens to be a cultural Muslim, but he does not pray, would you basically, Quranically speaking, would you consider him to be a Muslim or not?
Yeah, there is a difference between what the jurisprudence says and then when a ruling is implemented. Let me give you a very practical terms that many people, in very practical terms, what many people need to understand. When any legal system says, for instance, that the punishment for killing someone is this. This is what the legal system in principle or as a matter of principle states. But when it comes to an individual per se, then there is a judicial procedure that needs to be followed. And then the judge has to look into all the surrounding circumstances, because there can be an element of provocation, there can be an element of duress, depending also on the age of the culprit or the one who committed the killing. So it's very important to understand there's a difference between the ruling in principle in theoretical terms and applying the ruling on an individual in particular. So looking into your question, when we look into the Islamic jurisprudence, they draw a distinction, the Muslim jurists, between someone who does not pray out of denial, like inkaran laha wa juhudan laha, out of rejecting the idea that it is obligatory, and this has the ruling of being not Muslim. Why? Ankara ma'luma min ad-din bid-darura, that he has denied, or she, anyone, or they have denied what is essentially part and parcel of Islam. Okay, so this is still theoretically speaking. This is about the one who totally rejects the idea that it is obligatory in Islam. Then they speak of the one who does not pray kasalan wa tahawunan fi adaiha, the one who does not pray out of being lazy, but still they don't deny it. So they say that this is a sinful Muslim, or Muslim asi, as the wording and used by the Muslim jurists. So all of this when it comes to the Islamic jurisprudential theory. But is it for anyone like me to come and judge someone in particular? No, it is not for me. Allah judges this, because Allah knows what's in your heart, and I don't mean you and anyone here. I mean for anyone in general. Allah knows what is in the heart of the individual, and only Allah can judge this. So what do we get out of this? What we get out of this is every Muslim need to be careful that they have to pray, because it is Allah who will hold them accountable. So this is with regard to the.
I fully agree, and I appreciate the answer. Thank you so much, Hussam. Thank you so much.
You are most welcome.